Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Scientist Talks. Today we are in conversation with Professor Arindam Maitra, Associate Director of NIBMG. So Professor Maitra completed his bachelor's from the prestigious Presidency College in Kolkata and then pursued his master's in biochemistry from the University of Calcutta. He got his doctorate from the All India Institute of Medical Science, Delhi. Professor Maitra has dedicated his life to the welfare of human health through his research. He has been monumental in expanding our knowledge on oral cancer, improving maternal and child health, and also fighting the COVID pandemic. Thank you, sir, for giving us this opportunity. We are very delighted to be able to have a conversation with you today. So, how are you on this wonderful day?
Oh, I'm great. I had meetings since morning and presenting to funding agencies, so feeling on the top of the world.
Okay, and how excited are you about this interview?
Oh, very excited because talking to young people and communicating my thoughts, particularly to young people, is something that always excites me.
So your research career began in the late 90s where you worked on HIV, which was a hot topic back then. And then it pivoted to qPCR based diagnostics in the early to mid 90s, which then led to a foray of genomics and NGS. And then it amplified over the next decade. So, in short, whenever Indian science has a breakthrough moment or it has transitioned to a new era, you have always been in the forefront for the past 2 decades. So, since we believe that it is more than coincidence, we would like you to share some light on your thought process in choosing your career trajectory.
Very interesting question. So when I started to do my PhD, I had multiple options. In the city of Kolkata, like science to nuclear physics, then I had options to go elsewhere. But I decided to choose All India Institute of Medical Sciences and that particular lab for my PhD was because I wanted to do something which was relevant to human health. And that point of time, in the 90s, HIV was a raging outbreak, if not a pandemic, and there were serious consequences that people were projecting on health for HIV infection. But very little was known about HIV at that point of time, and particularly in India. So that is, I found out a lab and found my mentor, who was a person who was involved in HIV research at that time in India. He had a substantial background in viral research, and that time sequencing was just emerging as a technology to understand genomes. And so what I decided to do was to start sequencing the HIV virus, which we isolated from patients, actual patients rather than other kind of format of specimens, and try to understand from the viral sequence how this virus entered, different lineages, and what could it mean for the infection and HIV per se, and health aspects of the patients. So that was what made me interested to go for HIV, and that's when I did my PhD. Subsequently, I also did a lot of work on the initial dengue outbreak in Delhi in 1996. So that was also based on sequencing, and I found fascinated by sequencing as a technology that could inquire into genomes, and that created that trajectory for my research.
So, what has been your eureka moment in your career?
Very interesting. I would say there are many eureka moments that everybody has in their their lifetime. I also had my share, and I continue to have my share. That's what keeps me fascinated in research. But probably my first eureka moment was first time I was used to use standard sequencing using radioisotope DNTPs and do an autoradiograph and see DNA sequence bands and could read out from there. That's the stage of sequencing was in those days, and that was my first eureka.
Sir, how do you foster creativity and innovation in your work?
So I have always thought that one is we should look into broader, larger scientific questions, so that inspires creativity, because looking at larger scientific questions requires a lot of involvement, not only of specific scientific domain knowledge, but also interacting with people with interdisciplinary domains. So you have to interact, you have to engage and get expertise from various domains. That creates that has to inspire creativity. Without creativity, you can't do that. And of course, creativity gets inspired by my continuously interacting with my younger people, the students and the community here.
So, have you had any weird or unusual experiences while you were presenting your research at any research conference or scientific meeting?
Wired situations, many. So sometimes I will be asked questions which are like I did not answer. It generally happens most of the times to researchers, but thinking on spot and trying to come up with an explanation of what. So I would not specify one particular aspect, but what I can definitely say is I have been amazed at how many times I have not thought about a particular interpretation of the data, but when I have gone on stage and I have been asked some challenging questions, which on spot made me think about the data that I had and respond to the question. So those are kind of very strange situations I had found a few times myself in, and those were like that happened, and those are probably most of it.
What are some of the qualities you think a scientist should possess, both in terms of his technical expertise and personal life?
Difficult. See, as individuals, we have a lot of diversity, and I think we should inculcate and encourage that diversity. All the five fingers are not the same, but each of them have a specific role in whatever task the hand does. So these qualities necessarily have to be diverse, and I do not see a fixed set of qualities that makes a scientist or takes a scientist. But overall, if you are doing research, some things helps. One, a curious mind. Second, a passion, because you have to be passionate about your question. Otherwise, it doesn't lead you much ahead. And the third is probably a temperament. So many times I explain this to my younger colleagues in a sense that it's like playing a test match. So you are out to open and the innings, and in the first 1 hour you have to be very careful. You have to dodge and resist the temptation of hitting out and allow balls to pass through. And as and when your eyes get set, your timing comes back to your play, so you start hitting out and you start striking the ball confidently. So that's what temperament, that's the kind of temperament that should be there in research. But overall, patience.
So we always talk about like the challenges we face in research field and as a scientist and stuff. So I want to ask, like, what do you think is the most rewarding aspect of in a scientist's life or research or something like that?
Getting my own answers. So the position of the scientist is very enviable. He or she gets to ask the questions and then also gets to answer those questions themselves. The scientist can live in his or her own world, which is what he or she is working on. And I don't know, delusion or not, but that is something that probably makes them unique and makes them, I found that very enjoyable.
So, are there any misconceptions or stereotypes involving scientists that you would like to address?
Misconceptions means, general misconceptions is scientists are crazy. Yes, they are, but everybody is crazy. So it's okay to be crazy, but they are not as crazy as generally people think. There is also a misconception that scientists do not care about anything else but just what they are working on. That's also not true. Scientists actually address socially and publicly important questions, like all of us who do public health research are actually answering questions which are for the public, benefit of the public. And so we are not just cocooned into what we think is our own blue sky questions. So these are misconceptions.
What do you enjoy the most about your personal life, and what brings you a sense of fulfillment and contentment? And how do you maintain that sense of balance? Do you maintain the sense of balance?
That's a good question. So probably I don't, but probably many people don't. So it's difficult to maintain a balance. Balance is what you feel you enjoy most. So if I take it that way, then yes. So my contentment comes from, say, spending more time discussing research, particularly with my younger colleagues, which I get less and less time to do. My contentment comes from writing a manuscript or polishing of a manuscript and submitting it. My contentment comes from establishing something new or doing something in large numbers. Like today in science, consortium science and team science is very important. My contentment comes if I have been able to some way play a part in getting that kind of research done in the institute or in the country.
So, how do you approach personal growth and self-improvement outside the scope of your scientific endeavors?
Oh, I'm always open to criticisms. I always listen to criticisms, and so I always am thankful to a person who is telling me if I was wrong in something or if I have done something which is not the proper way. That was something could have been done better. So I am always open to that because I feel I should thank somebody who has taken that much interest to at least spend that effort in telling me that, and I'm thankful for those. And those I seriously take, and I do make course corrections based on what I hear.
So, what are some of the fun challenges you have had while mentoring your students?
Getting them to agree to go to a place to eat which is non-air conditions, because I believe that non-air conditioned places are the ones where the best food is available. Second is, of course, getting them to think passionately. So research question is something that has to be addressed with passion, and that has been a challenge. And I think I'm reasonably successful in getting across that point. And third is, doing science for your own enjoyment. So these are the things that I have tried to do with my colleagues, and I enjoy doing that.
You have already said that your sense of balance is tilted towards you spending more time with your work. So, how do you think your students maintain their personal and romantic lives? How do they have that balance? Do you think they have it?
I am a very, what I should say, non-interfering person. That is. So I don't even know what these students do unless they share with me. So if they share with me, I am all ears, and I try to honestly give opinion if it's asked for. I would strongly encourage everybody to have balance. I also do have balance in my own way, but and I would strongly recommend, because balance in life and work is very important. But the balance, shifts with which stage in your life you are. At student times, the balance is more towards learning newer things, getting excited about it, and putting that learning into practice. And of course, you should have your fun. You should have other things in life, and whether it is romance, whether it is food, whether it is movies, books, whatever, learning, whatever. But that balance, but there should be an overall focus on doing other things that what I talked about. And that comes naturally. I mean, that you don't have to strive for. If you love doing something, you will find that you are automatically doing that more. But as life goes on, then more things come up and you have to accommodate various things. And the balance keeps on being dynamic rather than a static thing.
So, do you have any quirky ritual or superstition that you follow before starting something very important for you?
Yeah, before every presentation, I stand up in the dais and say, I am the only wise person in this room and the rest are all duffers. Before I start my talk.
Okay. So have you ever found yourself engrossed in a heated argument while you are in a family gathering about your science or particularly about your science?
Many times. Many times. But generally, what I have done always is also, I mean, people do not understand many times. Earlier, never used to understand what we do. I doubt if my parents were able to tell to other people what my PhD research was. Many times in social gatherings, I used to look with caution when they started. Somebody came up to them and asked, "What does your son do?" And the way the description would happen would actually create a problem. But then over times, we have also, as scientists, started out making outreach, explaining to people. We have also trained ourselves in explaining what we do. So I think now those situations are much more relaxed and more enjoying. But we know exactly how we can communicate what we do. But yes, there are questions, there are unrealistic expectations that hearing somebody doing work on oral cancer, people expect that, I know everything about oral cancer and you are supposed to come out with a solution. Or for SARS-CoV-2, why are we still dying? I mean, why? What are you guys doing? So, but earlier, had it been a heated argument, this time my attitude is more liberal. So I know exactly how to address that. So I explain to them, in their own way, which they will understand what is it that we do and how is it important and how is it contributing to what he's asking me, he or she's asking me.
If you had the chance to conduct a scientific study on a completely absurd or whimsical topic, what would that be?
Genomics of health disparities.
That's not absurd.
That is absurd in our setting. Health disparities means, I do not know whether you understood my statement. So that there are in globally and of course in the country, or if you take a locality, you will find that you can group people based on how much access they have to health care. And there is a disparity there. And one has to look at a genomic underpinning to that.
Sir, can you share any experience where you have witnessed personal growth and transformation in your students' life?
Where I have an experience, many times I see. So one of my first PhD student, Arindam, I saw him how he transformed. Transformed into something. He was my first student. I was a novice that way in PhD mentoring, and he was of course doing his PhD for the first time. And what we embarked on was looking at the mitochondria in oral cancer, and I saw him how he transformed himself from a microbiology master's to somebody who was using computational genomics to answer questions that we are having. And that is one thing that has come up again and again. I find in my students, many of them coming from zoology or microbiology background, and then just transforming themselves into, they do not give up experimental work, but on the other hand, they gain the ability to use computational tools and ask quantitative questions.
Do you think what has helped them during such period that has helped them transform? So
Encouragement. One is encouragement that is required, and that I have tried to provide as much as possible. Second has been encouragement from the institute per se, because our coursework and other faculty were involved and continuously helped them to do this transformation. And the third is probably the nature of questions that are asked. I always believe my default hypothesis is that young people are brighter than the older people. So my students are always brighter than me. So all I have to do is to ask the right questions, and they will know exactly how to do it.
Sir, when you see this transformation, do you think that related to your PhD life and stuff, I was also like this, and when I started with something, and then I also has transformed at that point of my life.
Yeah, I see that. So I correlate. I get it. So my PhD experience had been like that. So I jumped into a hospital. AIMS is, after all, a tertiary care hospital. Used to do diagnostics in the daytime, the whole lab. And at night, I used to convert it to a sequencing laboratory in those days. So, and my transformation was with technology. I went to the industry, again had a round of transformation in, being very objective in what I want to do, and then again come back into research, and then again keeping that attitude in mind and work in an academic research. So all these places there has been transformations, and these transformations I also see in my students. So again, coming back to my first PhD student, Arindam, he then after PhD he decided to join the industry. And again, in industry I saw him transform himself completely from the academic to the industry, and I could see that I had seen in myself some point of time, and it's very enjoyable.
Is there something you miss about being in the industry? Because now you're in the academia, so that's. Is there something you missed?
I don't miss anything anywhere. When I start missing something, I move on.
So is there a chance of that happening anytime soon?
Kind of.
Preferably within the next 12 years. So we have a fun rapid fire segment where we ask you questions and you have to rapidly answer whatever the first thing that comes to you. So I'll start it off. So if your daily life had a theme song, what would that be?
Ask any question.
How do you unwind after the long day?
After a long day, scrolling through Facebook, looking through some messages that comes through, which are interesting social messages, and also looking at some film or other.
And what do you think are some of your qualities that have helped you throughout your journey?
Temperament, perseverance, and curiosity.
Romantic movies or action movies?
Mixture of both.
Favorite actor?
Without Bachchan,
An actress?
Shabana
Movie?
Sholay.
Oh, nice. Fiction or non-fiction?
Always.
One thing you cannot live without, like something materialistic or an activity.
Not science.
Interesting.
Beach or mountain.
Both. Earlier I used to like beaches, now more mountains.
What is the strangest dream that you ever had?
I am standing on a cliff and about to jump.
Jump.
So, what is the best conference you have ever attended?
That was the conference in my PhD days. So it was an international conference on AIDS. It was in Chennai. That was the first time I got a chance to present my data, get an award for it, and also see that cinema.
So, if you can communicate with one species of an animal, so what would you choose? Which one would you choose?
Who knows?
And like, what is the most offbeat conversation topic you would choose to have with them?
Scoreline of a football match.
But you can already talk to humans. So it has to be
It has to be another animal.
Can you talk to humans?
No.
So, if you had any superpower that would aid you in your scientific career, what would it be and why?
I think scientific things are best achieved without superpowers. They should be achieved with rational thinking and sound scientific principles. So, if at all a superpower, yes, ability to do science well.
And if you could collaborate with any historical figure of your research, who would you choose and why?
That's a more difficult question. So many people. It's a very difficult question, but I would say that I would definitely think in terms of Charles Darwin, maybe.
And why?
Because from observations, coming out with hypothesis, which completely revolutionizes the way you think, and you do not care about what others think about it.
Impact factor or impact on society?
Impact on society, and which is measured by citations, not impact.
So here we come to an end to this interview. you, and it was really great to have this conversation with you, sir.